O Brahmana Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure, removing all troubles and miseries, is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Purport. Sri Narada Muni personally experienced that the most feasible and practical way to open the path of salvation, or to get relief from all miseries of life, is to hear submissively the transcendental activities of the Lord from the right and bona fide sources. This is the only remedial process. The entire material existence is full of miseries. Foolish people have manufactured out of their tiny brains many remedial measures for removing the threefold miseries pertaining to the body and mind, pertaining to the natural disturbances, and in relation with other living beings. The whole world is struggling very hard to exist out of these miseries, but men do not know that without the sanction of the Lord, no plan or no remedial measure can actually bring about the desired peace and tranquility. The remedial measure to cure a patient by medical treatment is useless if it is not sanctioned by the Lord. To cross the river or the ocean by a suitable boat is no remedial measure if it is not sanctioned by the Lord. We should know for certain that the Lord is the ultimate sanctioning officer, and we must therefore dedicate our attempts to the mercy of the Lord for the ultimate success, or to get rid of the obstacles on the path of success. The Lord is all-pervading, all-powerful, omniscient, and omnipresent. He is the ultimate sanctioning agent of all good or bad effects. We should therefore learn to dedicate our activities unto the mercy of the Lord and accept Him either as impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It does not matter what one is. One must dedicate everything in the service of the Lord. If one is a learned scholar, scientist, philosopher, poet, etc., then he should employ his learning to establish the supremacy of the Lord. Try to study the energy of the Lord in every sphere of life. Do not decry Him and try to become like Him or take His position simply by fragmental accumulation of knowledge. If one is an administrator, statesman, warrior, politician, etc., then one should try to establish the Lord's supremacy in statesmanship. Fight for the cause of the Lord as Sri Arjuna did. In the beginning, Sri Arjuna, the great fighter, declined to fight, but when he was convinced by the Lord that the fighting was necessary, Sri Arjuna changed his decision and fought for his cause. Similarly, if one is a businessman, an industrialist, an agriculturist, etc., then one should spend his hard-earned money for the cause of the Lord. Think always that the money which is accumulated is the wealth of the Lord. Wealth is considered to be the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and the Lord is Narayan, or the husband of Lakshmi. Try to engage Lakshmi in the service of Lord Narayan and be happy. That is the way to realize the Lord in every sphere of life. The best thing is, however, after all, get relief from all material activities and engage oneself completely in hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. But in the case of the absence of such opportunity, one should try to engage in the service of the Lord, everything for which one has specific attraction. And that is the way of peace and prosperity. The word samsushitam in this stanza is also significant. One should not think for a moment that the realization of Narada was childish imagination only. It is not like that. It is so realized by the expert and erudite scholars, and that is the real import of the word samsushitam. Etat samsushitam brahmans tapatraya chakichitam yad ishvare bhagavati karma brahmani bhavitam. O Brahmana Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyadyade Satarne. Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, is a continuation of Bhagavad-Gita, how to apply the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita in the practical world. And for that, we have to understand, as Sri Rupa Goswami has stated, what our present condition is, what our present situation is, both spiritually and materially. Now, in the modern society, people don't know even what their present material condition is. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ukramantam sitim vapi bunjana vagunanvita vimudonana pashanti jnana chakshrusa. That the foolish cannot understand how the living entity quits his body or what kind of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. That those whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this clearly. So it's come to the point in human civilization that people don't even know what kind of body they're in under the spell of the material modes of nature. And therefore they're considered foolish, no matter how seemingly learned they have, how many degrees they have, etc., how much people praise them. Svavidvara hostra karara samstuta purusha parshu. The big animals, they're looked upon as great by the little animals. But the problem is that the big animals and little animals, the Tevidu Swartakatim Hi Vishnu, they don't glorify the actual glorifiable person, Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that there are two things, as he explained in that verse, there are two different things that, I should say. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has two verses that he repeats twice. Now, Bhagavad Gita is a summary of all the Vedic literature. There's billions of verses in the Vedic literature. I don't know exactly how many billion. But the summary of all the Vedic literature is 700 verses in Bhagavad Gita. So obviously Krishna had to be quite concise in his presentation of Bhagavad Gita to summarize the whole Vedic literature in 700 verses. But in those 700 verses, there are actually only a few, mainly two verses, that are repeated twice. So obviously they must have great importance also. And one of them is Shreyam Swadharma Viguna Paradharma Swanustita Shrey Dharme Nidinam Shreyak Paradharmo Bhayavaha. That it is far better to discharge one's own prescribed duty, even imperfectly, than to accept someone else's duty perfectly. Destruction, the cost of one's own duty, is better because to follow someone else's duty is dangerous. Or to follow another's path is dangerous. So this is repeated twice in Bhagavad Gita, that we should find out what is our duty, both materially and spiritually. Now Prabhupada mentions here in the verse in the purport that ultimately our duty is to hear and chant about Krishna, is to live in the spiritual world with Krishna. That's our main duty. But while we're in the material world, we also have to maintain this body, because if we don't maintain the body, then we will have to get another body, start all over again. Well, not exactly all over again, but we'll have to start in another body the process of devotional service. Just by leaving the body, we don't become perfect. As Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Sanatana Goswami had developed itching sores, and on his way to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, he had bathed in impure water, and therefore he had developed some skin disease. And while he was there, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would embrace him, and the sores in his body would ooze pus, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would be covered with the pus. And Sanatana Goswami was greatly disturbed by this, that now I'm offending Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I've come here to get happiness, and actually all I'm doing is making offenses against the Supreme Lord. He consulted with Jagannananda Pandit. Jagannananda Pandit gave him advice, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't appreciate that advice. And so finally Sanatana Goswami decided within his mind that the next Rath Yatra festival, when the cart comes by, I'm going to throw my body underneath the cart of Jagannath, and that way I'll be killed by Jagannath's cart, and I can come back and take a better birth at least. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was omniscient. He knew Sanatana Goswami's plans, and therefore he told Sanatana Goswami one day, he said, "My dear Sanatana Goswami," Sanatana Goswami was living with Haridas Thakur. He asked Haridas Thakur, he said, "Haridas Thakur, here is a man, he has actually someone else's property, but he wants to destroy it. Is that right, that he wants to destroy someone else's property?" So Sanatana Goswami understood that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was omniscient. He understood his mind. So he fell down before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet and said, "My dear Lord, what is the good of this body? It's just committing offenses." But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him that actually your body is meant for so much service. That is not your body, it's my body, and I planned your body for so much service. You have no right to destroy it. It's not your property. Now Sanatana Goswami was a learned scholar, an advanced devotee. Therefore he could actually understand that his body was Krishna's property. Now, believe it or not, and probably we don't believe it, our body is also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's property. And therefore we're supposed to find out what we're supposed to do with it. That is called Krishna consciousness, at least a path of Krishna consciousness. That is called Jnana Yoga. Now Karma Yoga means I'm suffering. Well, good. Well, I'm surprised. You're the only one in this world who's suffering. Everyone is suffering. But I'm really suffering. Well, really, everyone else is falsely suffering. Only you are really suffering. No, the whole material world is actually meant for suffering. And if we think we're enjoying, then we're on the same level as the dog or the hog. They also think they're enjoying while they're suffering. But I'm suffering, personally. I don't care what everyone else is doing. How do I get rid of my suffering? Well, that's why this verse is here. First thing we do is have to accept that everything belongs to Krishna, including our body. Wait a second. You're going too far. No, I agree. Everything belongs to Krishna. Everything I don't have belongs to Krishna. I'll accept that. And everyone else should engage everything they have in Krishna's service, and I'll engage whatever I like to, whatever I can in Krishna's service. But if we want to get free from the threefold miseries, that's the first thing we have to do, is accept that my body also belongs to Krishna, and I should find out what he wants us to do, what he wants me to do with it. So we have Guru, we have Sadhu, we have Shastra. We had Krishna speaking to Arjuna. Krishna told Arjuna that you're a Kshatriya. Well, Arjuna was obviously a Kshatriya. Krishna didn't have to convince him. Actually, you're not a 6'10" Chinese woman, you're a Kshatriya. There was no, Arjuna had no doubts. Well, actually, I feel like a woman sometimes, and I always like to arrange flowers for Krishna on my altar, and this fighting is a little messy, I don't feel like it today. No, Arjuna understood he was a Kshatriya and that he was supposed to fight. Now, as Prabhupada writes, that we don't know what Krishna has to tell us because Krishna is not personally present within us. Well, I'm sorry. He's not we don't have a chariot right now that we're riding on, and Krishna is not personally talking to us. So how do we know what Krishna wants us to do? So Prabhupada said if one studies Bhagavad-Gita as well as Krishna's representative, then one can find out what Krishna wants us to do. So that we have to do. We have to study Bhagavad-Gita, and we have to hear from Krishna's representatives. What is our duty? Now, our duty may vary according to time, place, and circumstance. Now, if we find out what our duty is, we have two duties. One duty is Prabhupada writes here in the purport. One should therefore discharge his prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness rather than the prescribed duties for others. That's called Swadharma. So there are two kinds of Swadharma. There's the Swadharma given in the Vedas, according to one's psychophysical nature, and then there's the Swadharma given by the spiritual master. So the Swadharma given by our gurus and disciple succession, our acharyas, is more or less what nectar of devotion. If we want to read about our duties, we have 64 items of deity worship, we have our 9 processes of pure devotional service, and etc., etc. Most of our literature is dedicated to what is our devotional activities. So that's what we have to do. Even if we don't know anything else, at least Prabhupada said we have to chant Hare Krishna. When, at the time of leaving his body, apparently leaving his body, Dhruva Maharaj saw a Vaikuntha airplane coming to bring him back to, I guess, Dhruva Loka, the pole star. And there were 2 servants of Lord Narayan on the transcendental airplane that was bringing him to the pole star. So at that time, Dhruva Maharaj was so ecstatic, he didn't know what to say, so he said Hare Krishna. And of course, Death personified came to say him off. She offered his obeisances, and he stepped on her back and climbed into the Vaikuntha airplane. So, we may not know what to do or what not to do, but at least we should chant Hare Krishna. That's what we're supposed to do. Now, in the absence of being able to chant Hare Krishna incessantly and hear about Krishna incessantly, therefore we have to maintain this body, because otherwise we'll degrade ourselves. And therefore there's an anad bhavati bhutani parjana ana sambhava, that all living entities subsist on food grains. So ultimately we have to get something to eat. No festival, no activity will go on unless there's some food. And for our case, prasad. We can't live like Dhruva Maharaj did on simply, well, let's see, Dhruva Maharaj, he started out by eating kapita fruit every 3rd day. So who's willing to do that for 1 month? Maybe we could do it. It wouldn't be such an austerity. But then, how many of us would advance to the stage where we take a little water every 6 days? That would be possible, but it would be quite, a challenge. Well, actually, the 2nd month he ate leaves that fell from the tree every 6th day. Hopefully, we'd come in the autumn. Otherwise, the leaves would be rather scarce. We'd have to climb up from the tree and pull a few out when no one's looking. And then the next month, a little bit of water every 9th day. Well, that's getting... We'd be probably on our back dreaming about eating. The next month he decided to stop breathing. No, we can't even, that's only in not even our dreams we're going to try that. So there's a point that goes beyond our ability to stop eating. Eating doesn't mean just food, it also means water, it means breathing, etc., etc. We have our limits. Now, we take it for granted air. We take it for granted water. And he actually probably once said in a morning walk, he said they've polluted the air, they polluted the water, they polluted the food, and therefore there must be war. So that's also, by the way, in the Charak Samhita, that's also a statement that the cause of pandemics is the pollution, is caused by the leaders when they pollute the air, when they pollute the water, and when they pollute the food. That's the cause of the pandemics. So we need food, we need anna, and that doesn't come from simply tractors and plowing the field or whatever. Water is necessary. And water doesn't come from only irrigation. It has to come from yajna, sacrifice. Krishna is controlling the universe. He authorizes different amounts of water to be distributed to different parts of the planet. Indra does not work independently of Krishna. And Indra depends upon Krishna's pleasure, and Krishna's pleasure depends upon sacrifice. And the only sacrifice in this age is the chanting of Hare Krishna, Yagya Vai Vishnu, that will be effective. Now, of course, in India, there's some culture left, and therefore people can understand this. They can understand that milk doesn't come out of a carton in the store. And you can't eat the nuts and bolts that the factories produce. They have some brains left. In the West, people have lost their intelligence for the most part. And therefore, systematically, they've been misdirected by the leadership into the world of sense gratification, so-called sense gratification. There is no sense gratification. People's senses are not gratified in the Western world. They're working like an ass to get money, to get the so-called sense gratification that's being offered that never gratifies their senses. And it's made like that because people are as being cheated, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada used to say. There's so-called Vaishyas in the modern world, a few of them, who are simply trying to cheat everyone. And they become more and more expert at cheaters, which means they're becoming more and more demoniac. And most of the people are simply Shudras or less than Shudras. They're saying, please cheat me, I want to be cheated. I want to make sure that you cheat me in such a way as I don't even think I'm being cheated. But the economic system is such. Dharma begins with Dharmak Shakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. Dharma comes from Krishna. And who is Krishna? Krishna is a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. That's who Krishna is. That's where Dharma comes from. So do you think that Krishna just didn't get it right? He wasn't, he's a Vaishya, but he just didn't know how to be a Vaishya. And therefore, he didn't know that actually he had too many cows and he should slaughter them in Goloka Vrindavan and get a McDonald's there and get business going. No, Krishna is eternally a cowherd boy. And he's eternally protecting cows. Namo Brahmanya Daivaya Go Brahmanya Hidayata Jagat Hitaya Krishna Govindaya Namo Namaha. That Krishna is eternally protecting the cows and the Brahmins. And anyone who doesn't protect the cows and the Brahmins, they're in the same category as Kamsa and his followers. Kamsa and his followers, after Kamsa tried to kill this child born of Devaki, the eighth child, which was actually Yogamaya, smashed little Yogamaya on the ground. She flew out of his hands into the air as Durga Devi. And told Kamsa, you're such a fool that the eighth child of your sister has already been born elsewhere and he's going to kill you. So Kamsa, who was a worshiper of Durga, as many big demons are, and he thought, well, my sister, she actually had Durga as her daughter. She must be really special. So he was very repentant for some time before Devaki and Vasudeva. But then when he met at night with his counselors, and he had a really amazing cabinet. I don't know who his prime minister was, but the members were an all-star cabinet of demons. Aghasura was there, Trinavarta was there, Putana was there, Bakasura was there. I mean, this was an all-star cast. If you ever want to see an assembly of demons in the world, this was it. I wish we had a photograph. And their conclusion was, one of them, is that Kamsa, you should kill every child who is born within the last 3 days. At least they didn't abort the child, they waited till they were born before they started to kill them. But anyhow, they had the same mentality. And we should go around and kill all the cows and all the Brahmins. That will make life good. Sound familiar? So because this has been the systematic attempt to kill Brahminical culture in the West and to kill cows systematically, destroy agriculture in the West for at least a few hundred years now. So they've made progress. They've gotten practically everyone off the farm. People only see cows mostly in pictures, in old family albums. Brahminical culture, they don't believe in Brahminical consciousness. They think if you're truthful, you're a fool. As they say, as everyone knows, how do you know when a politician is lying? Yes, when his lips start moving. So truthfulness, the last leg of Dharma, I mean, it's taken some really hard knocks lately. And what to speak of mercy, cleanliness, and austerity? I mean, they're way gone. If you beat a dog, you'll get arrested in most countries. And if you kill a cow, then you're an entrepreneur. But as I said, to make it brief, what I said before, once they kill the cow and the bull, and it's not only the vegans, they're pro-cow, so to speak. They claim to be pro-cow. But they want to protect the cow. But what about the poor bull? Both the cow and bull, they give fertilizer. And at the same time, the bull, he plows the land. So once you have the land plow, you have the fertilizer, you have seeds that work, that aren't genetically modified. You don't need pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, and peoplecides. Once you have the seeds, you have the land being plowed by the bull, you have the fertilizer, then everyone can grow food if you perform sacrifice. if there is rain coming. So it's not just plowing the field and protecting the bull, it's also Brahminical culture, which is meant for teaching us sacrifice to Krishna, Yagya by Vishnu. Then one will get all necessities of life, and at the same time one will become conscious of Krishna, gradually. But because they've killed the bull, they've killed the cow, they've killed Brahminical culture, because the Shudras, they have no intelligence, and they're being cheated by the demons in the form of Vaishyas. Therefore, they've invented something called technology and industrialization. Because they need something to plow the land, therefore they got the tractors, etc., etc. And to get the tractors, you need a factory to build tractors, and get the factory to build tractors, you have to get resources, and to get the resources, you have to go and build boats and mines, and you have to have transportation, the resources to build the factories. Build the factories, you need another factory to build the factory, and then you have to have trucks to transport all the resources so they can bring the trucks and everything else and the tractors to the land, and then you have to bring the grain and the seeds, and you have to bring the fertilizer, and you have to bring, it goes on and on and on, and then ultimately you need tanks and bombs and airplanes to steal from other countries when you run out of resources yourself. And welcome to advanced civilization, Kali Yuga. And if you don't believe me, then read the newspapers. The sacred text. And it's exactly as I said before, that Brahmin who had the underwear, and he had the mouse stole the underwear, and therefore he had to get a cat to protect his underwear, and to feed the cat he needed a cow, to milk the cow he needed a wife, his wife wanted children so he needed a house, and because he needed a house he had to get a job, and because he had to get a job he had to get a car. In order to pay for the car he had to work at night. So to protect his underwear, he wound up with 2 jobs, a house, a car, a wife, 2 children, a cow, and a cat. And he realized finally that it was impossible to protect his underwear, so he walked away. He took his underwear off and he walked away. So that's what civilization is coming to, before we all move into the forest and we give up, as predicted in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have to consider what is actually necessary and what is unnecessary, what is anartha and what is anartha. Now, when we give classes like this in the West, everyone's thinking, wow, come on, get real. How many of us are going to move out into the farm and start, plowing the farm with an oxen? We don't even know if there are any oxen. We've never seen one. And what about a plow? Where do you get one of those things from? And what about the land? Like in Slovenia, if you want to get land, you have to spend practically 1/3 of your money to pay, if you don't bribe the officials, to pay all the different types of taxes, and to go through all the formalities to get the land, etc., etc. So by the time you can only get land in the place where no one else wants the land. Like in Slovenia, there's part of southern Slovenia, southeast, where there's a lot of bears. So if you want to get land there and live with the bears, it's pretty cheap. Otherwise, it's quite expensive. So it seems quite impractical, not impossible, a little difficult in our present situation. First of all, we'd have to train it just seems pretty complicated. Get the plow, train the oxen, find the land, the fertilizer, the seeds. It's just like... Therefore, here it says, at least we can perform the part called sacrifice. Namely, Varnashram is eternal. It's everywhere. You can't deny it. Even if everyone is just a Shudra and a few Vaishyas, there's always people who are trying to take the role of administrators and so-called learned persons, but they happen to be not very advanced. They have, as it says, that the Shudra dressed as a king was a Shudra, even though he dressed as a king. So there are people administrating, but they're all controlled by the few Vaishyas in the Western world who are cheaters. So the Brahmins are lost their intelligence, the Kshatriyas have lost their intelligence, they're being controlled by a few cheaters in the form of so-called Vaishyas. But by the chanting of the loud chanting of the holy names and the spreading of Krishna consciousness and this trying to establish Brahminical consciousness, culture, then some people will get some brains. Medasa. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishna Sango Pangastra Parshadam Jagnai Swankirtana Praya Yanti Hi Samedasa. There are some people with brains left, although they're not very many. But still this chanting will actually give people brains back again. This is the only thing that will actually create real brains in people. The spreading of the Hare Krishna mantra, spreading of Krishna conscious culture. And therefore, everyone can be engaged according to their present propensities and actually act as a real Brahmin, as a real administrator, as a real Vaishya, as a real assistant. Everyone can engage in the Western world, even without immediately establishing what Prabhupada, when Prabhupada was here, and he spread Krishna consciousness, he spread it so effectively that at least some of the devotees, they had this inclination, they wanted to work the land. They wanted to live simply. They wanted to raise their family in a sane environment, which would be as easy as possible, where the children could be raised outside of the demoniac culture. So some devotees actually started farm projects. And they worked up until a point when they lost the clue what the whole thing was about. When they lost the spiritual connection with the farm project, or they lost the ideal. Anyhow, we're not about to immediately start that, especially in most places in the Western world, although there are some places of success in this endeavor. But for ourselves, whatever our propensity is, that we should utilize it in the Sankirtan movement, in the cultural revolution that Prabhupada envisioned. And that's the most important thing at the present moment. Of course, it looks like we may become more encouraged quicker than anyone thought in establishing farm communities in the Western world, because there seems to be something called an attempt to, well, we could say supply chain shortages or whatever, basically to starve people to death, to be frank. Too many people on this world, as one politician said, head of England, he said, useless eaters. So we're all useless eaters, but at least we eat prasadam, so it's not completely useless. But most people are useless eaters. And all this entertainment, all this sport, whatever else, it's just to distract these useless eaters. So some people have decided that maybe they're useless eaters, so we might as well get rid of them. And one of the ways of getting rid of useless eaters is just don't give them anything to eat. And then you get rid of them very easily. It probably gives the example, if someone is a guest in your house and you want to get rid of, and your relatives or something, you want to get rid of them, they won't go away. So the first thing you do is you cut out salt. And they start getting a little discouraged. Then you cut out, their favorite vegetable, whatever it is. And then gradually, after a while, you cut out enough things, they say, well, I think it's time to go home. But our Sankirtan movement, as explained here, there are preachers, there are devotees who like to study the books, who like to explain to others the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. There are devotees who like to organize everyone. There are devotees who like to gather resources. And if they're understood, if they chant Hare Krishna and have a sadhana where they get a little taste for the holy name and for hearing about Krishna, then the result is they can be happy in their service. Now, without the chanting of the holy name, without the sadhana, it's not going to work at all. Because anyone who knows the history of ISKCON, when I joined the society, we didn't know what to do in terms of economics, but there were hardly any devotees in the movement, so there was no problem. Most of the devotees were just working, who had who were householders. They just got a job. I was a student, and the other devotees in the temple were, more or less students. We lived quite simply. We didn't really need so much. And then one time, my temple president, because I was the treasurer, he told me I had to get a job. Now, I never worked in my life, to tell you the truth. The only job I had was an usher in a movie theater for a few months. And I never joined the Hare Krishna movement, especially to get a job. So then I heard about Harinam, how they were successful in the other part of America, in the West Coast, doing Harinam and collecting money on the Harinam by distributing back to Godhead. And I was willing to try anything. So we took out the Harinam on the first day, and I went out because I heard they were collecting with conch shells. So we went out, a few of us, and we did Harinam downtown Buffalo, and I went out with a conch shell, myself and another devotee, and we went around and just held the conch shell and put money in it. I remember the first time a person put $1 in it, I almost fainted. What's that? No, the $1. I had a conch shell, and we just showed them the conch shell during the Harinam. Some devotees would be chanting, and two of us would go out with a conch shell, showing people the conch shell, trying to get them to give a donation. We were like a street show. And someone put $1 in the conch shell. And wow, I said, wow. I mean, $1 was a lot of money back then compared to what it is. To buy a candy bar back then, it was a dime. A nickel, actually. 5 cents. Now it's like it's like $2 to get a candy bar. So when someone put $1, I was like amazed. And we went back and we counted the money, and it's $27. And I realized that I became the Sankirtan leader also. It went along with the treasurer. As a matter of fact, the day I moved into the temple, they made me the head pujari. And I didn't know who the deities were. In any case, in times of war, they recruit all kinds of people. So that's what we did in Buffalo in order to maintain ourselves. There are other stories, but anyhow, even in Buffalo, it got down to minus sometimes 30 degrees in the winter, with snow 3 meters high, with the snow drifts. And the devotees went out, including myself, sometimes. We went out with tongs. Tongs are bath slippers and dhotis. It was a little cold. But that's all we had, because as soon as we joined the movement, we had to surrender our karmi clothes. Karmi clothes. We wouldn't touch the thing, even if we froze to death. In any case, they brought out a jug of a thermos of dal every day to keep us warm. Hot dal. In any case, the chanting of Hare Krishna, the distribution of back to Godheads, that was our maintenance. Our philosophy was, as Prabhupada's philosophy was, if you simply distribute my books, everything will come. And then we became very ambitious after some time, especially after Prabhupada left. There was some competition, who would get the biggest farm, who would get the biggest castle, who'd get this, the biggest this. And the Harinam, the Sankirtan, just wasn't bringing enough money. So we discovered, or at least our leaders discovered, well, first of all, we discovered things like the change-up, which is quite interesting, which I don't have to teach you. And we were bringing a lot of money. Unfortunately, we were doing it in public, and the public didn't appreciate our fantastic intelligence, how to steal people, how to rob people of their money in public, transcendental robbery in public. So therefore, we had to decline from doing that. Then we got into paintings. Actually, then we got into records, Karmi records. Then it was candles. So it went on and on and on and on. And devotees, didn't have time, many of them, to chant Hare Krishna or to read Prabhupada's books. They were absorbed in transcendental trickery, paraphernalia distribution. And therefore, they thought, why should I work so hard for the Hare Krishna movement, whatever that might be? Why don't I just start up my own candle business, sell my own paintings, sell my own Karmi records? Because we're making so much money. So they, as Prabhupada said, they became enlightened. I don't need the Hare Krishna movement. Krishna will send me all the money I want, and I'll be happy. So then the devotees started, and then of course we had the problems with our acharyas, also getting enamored by the material energy, some of them. And therefore we had a migration out of ISKCON back to the material world. And needless to say, many of the projects, like the farm projects, they became distorted. To just give a brief, there was one farm project in America where they decided they were going to depend strictly on the milk coming from the cows for all their necessities. Unfortunately, they got this idea that everyone needed their own car. And everyone needed their own television set to watch ITV, ISKCON television. Everyone needed a vacation at least once a year in India, because taking care of cows is quite a stressful business. So you have to go to the holy place on pilgrimage. So the poor cows, they couldn't give enough milk for the necessities of these devotees. So they got up to like 300 cows, plus I guess bulls also. And the cows still didn't understand self-sufficiency. So they declared that self-sufficiency impossible, impractical. They never thought that, anyhow, we can imagine what they should have thought. So it is possible, if we're willing to chant Hare Krishna and be happy in Krishna consciousness, to live simply. And if we're not prepared to live simply, there's no amount of cows that can give us all the milk we require for our necessities. So the chanting is necessary, and in order to chant, we have to chant offenselessly. And in order to chant offenselessly, we have to work on the Madhyama Adhikari platform. We have to work out of love for Krishna, to serve his mission. We have to try to love the devotees and cooperate with them, appreciate them, whatever service they're doing for the mission. And we have to try to help the innocent to become Krishna conscious. And we have to learn how to avoid Facebook. We have to we have to learn how to avoid the atheists who are against Krishna, not become associated with them. Which Facebook is actually an example, because it says that in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 5th canto, the forest of enjoyment, that in the forest of enjoyment, that there are different monkeys. And all the monkeys, their business is simply make faces at each other. And that's what you enjoy, watching everyone making faces at each other. Facebook. So this we have to avoid, this type of social... And Facebook may have its utilization, everything has its utilization in Krishna's service. Even this modern industrialization and technology probably didn't decry it, but it has to be utilized in Krishna's service. Otherwise, it probably didn't utilize the technology, then he couldn't have traveled around the world and spread Krishna consciousness. He couldn't have printed unlimited books to spread Krishna conscious philosophy. So this is not, but it should be utilized in Krishna's service, and most of it isn't used in Krishna's service. And when it's used in Krishna's service, and it's advanced, people advanced in Krishna's service, then they won't need technology. They won't need industrialization. But that's in the future. In the meantime, we should find our place in the Hare Krishna movement, and if we can speak about Krishna in a way to convince people that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we should do that. If we can help organize in some way, we should do that. If we have some resources to utilize for Prabhupada's cultural revolution, for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's cultural revolution, with art and music and dance and everything else, and headed up by book distribution, by transcendental knowledge, to convince people that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we should utilize that. That's sacrifice. That's yajna for this age. And the result is, we'll get a taste for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad-Gita, for chanting Hare Krishna. And if we don't utilize our energy for that, then we'll be allured to utilize it for something else. And if we utilize it for something else, then our intelligence will be taken away, the taste for devotional service will be taken away, the taste for chanting Hare Krishna will be taken away, and we'll merge back into the material energy. We used to call that bloop. Now sometimes we call it our congregation. At least a part of the congregation which is not very active. So this is here, everything there is in Srila Prabhupada's books. We don't have to, everything is meant to elaborate on what Prabhupada said, but which is, practically speaking, we have our place right now in Varnashram Dharma. We should utilize our talents in the Sankirtan movement, and those who become a little bit aware, those householders especially, who become aware and eligible, qualified to live a more simple life, at the same time have a taste for Krishna consciousness, they can actually organize together and establish something in the beginning which is like farm communities. Learn how to go in, at least in that direction. At least, do something, even if we show a cow and a bull. Here's a cow and a bull there. Even if we do have that much, at least we're making some progress. And then maybe someone may even, hey, what does this bull do anyhow? Let's try it out, Hey, wow, look at this. This is a lot of fun, But at least if we go in that direction, then eventually, and we keep on chanting Hare Krishna, we'll get the brains how to actually do these things. Krishna will give us transcendental intelligence, how to actually establish a real civilization. And we can be part of it. So thank you very much. I'll stop there. Any comments, Maharaj?
Yeah, I invite you to visit the farm projects that I'm involved in and see that the possibility is, it's not solely, it can be done. The leaders of this movement should get behind us, fulfill Prabhupada's desire for meetings, and let's get the mission down the going as Prabhupada.
Bring back civilization.
Please.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes. Is there a microphone? No wires. Well, at least we're not so technological here. Okay.
Next 6 months, what would, in your opinion, be like the most important aspects of devotional service for devotees in the next 6 months?
Chant your rounds without offense. Follow the regular principles. And find out from Guru, from Sadhu, from Shastra, and with the help of the Super Soul in our heart, what service we can render to the Sankirtan movement.
So you're speaking about farm communities and Sankirtan and Harinam. So is this something that we should do all together, or?
Well, it takes organization and intelligence. It's not so easy, as I'm sure Bhakti Vikash Maharaj will say, will tell us, that we're not, you just don't, think. I have a lot of disciples, well not a lot, but I have a number of disciples in Russia who want to do farm communities. And I get their letters from them, even brahmacharis, And I have some devotees who are actually doing farm communities. But a lot of them are just dreaming about it. And they go to farm communities and they're not successful because they don't really think about it very deeply, all the elements that have to go into it. They just have some romantic idea what a farm community is going to be like. Yes, Maureen.
Exactly what you're saying. I have one talk which is available on YouTube, maybe Facebook, which is elements required for starting farm communities. A lot of things. You have to organize it. Like you said, it's not just to go on the land and dream that you're going to have fun. There are many elements. If you don't get them all,
Thank you. So we should consult with Krishna within our heart and with his representatives, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, what they want us to do. And we should be happy doing that. Not that we look around, the sky's falling there, it's falling there, it's falling there. Wow, it's the sky above my head. No, find out what Krishna wants us to do and do that. That's all. And if we do that, then our lives will become perfect and we'll be able to contribute to the Sankirtan movement. Just by chanting Hare Krishna, we'll be liberating so many trees and so many living entities. So even if we have no idea what to do, at least chant Hare Krishna. And if there's no food, then you're invited to go to India, to one of the farm communities. There should be food there. So. And we have a farm community even in Slovenia. So you can go to one of the farm communities and bake a little rice or whatever and chant Hare Krishna. Yes, something else? Yes. He actually had his hand up first.
I visited one semi-self-sufficient Christian farm community in Texas, and they have something over 100 families living there. They've been there since like the 70s. And so we were talking with one of the senior men there, who kind of like, they work the land with the animals. They didn't use tractors or anything. And so myself and another devotee, we were speaking with them and we were asking what they do. And they said they don't use the bull. They use horses. They said the bull was impractical. It's not as practical as horses. So you were saying, like, you mentioned working the land with like bulls, and that's there in the Vedic scriptures. They were explaining that the horse is easier to train. It's faster as an animal. It requires less maintenance. And even like if you see historically, it's been used throughout at least like Europe in cultivating like field horses.
Yeah.
But like it's a fact that in the Vedic literature, the bull is given, and that's what we understand that's been used.
That's right.
Vedically. So I didn't really know how to like reply to like or understand, because it seems superficially that like the horse is a superior animal, but we know that we had, Vedically speaking, the Veda says.
One time they asked Prabhupada, where is this in Texas? It's a devotee community?
Outside of
Waco.
Waco.
It's not a devotee farm community. No, you're Christian. One time they were asked Prabhupada said, what's a beautiful animal? and someone said a cow, and Prabhupada gave a face and said, no, a horse is a beautiful animal. The problem with the horse is that the superiority of the bull is, number one, if you don't utilize the cow to do something practical, you're going to kill it and eat it and go to hell, no matter how much you plow the land or whatever with the horse. Second thing is that the bull gives cow dung, gives dung, which fertilizes the land. The second is people are in a hurry, perhaps for a horse, because they don't have the patience, because they're in the mode of passion. They don't have the patience to utilize the bull properly. So, I'm not an expert at the difference between a bull and a horse, but, I'm sure, and the horse may have its utility, but it doesn't fulfill all the necessary requirements for human civilization. Yes?
There's a Bhagavad-Gita article by Hari Krishna Devi Jasi on the topic of horses and bulls.
Great. Anything else?
Innumerable details.
Such as impacting the soil, so many different things. Yes?
Our grandparents actually used cows for the flock. Like 50 years ago, 60 years, most of these bottomlands were actually self-sufficient peasants. Buy just salt, coffee, sugar, oil, and that's it. The rest was self-sufficient. So to start the communities, you need knowledge. You need these self-sufficient communities. On the market, there are already technologies like permaculture and biodynamics. They use worms for plowing. And the added value for the vegetables, for example, is much higher than with the conventional or classic ecological production of the food. So knowledge is outside, and you should start maybe just with gardening on your balcony, for the start. Learn a lot about the plants and how to produce food, and then you start with a small garden. And first, just put the trees in the soil, because fruits takes most of the time. I mean, to grow a tree takes 7 years. So this is one of the first steps I learned from elders. When you buy the land, first put fruit trees, then build a house, and the rest of the project.
Good, thank you. Anything else? Yes, Madhuri.
You mentioned that one of the elements to chanting obediently is to develop that love for Krishna. So, two parts. How do you develop that love for Krishna so that you aren't chanting obediently? And then in the meantime, when we don't have that genuine love for Krishna, is there a way to correct those offenses so we do different?
Well, Krishna bestows upon us His mercy. It's not that there's a way the way we get the mercy is we become eligible to get Krishna's mercy. We act in such a way as that Krishna becomes merciful to us. And that's mainly by trying to engage in the process of devotional service as steadily as we can, with as much enthusiasm as we have. And then Krishna gives us the intelligence by which we can understand more and more clearly how to get His unalloyed mercy, so that He can bestow upon us, reveal Himself to us within our consciousness, within our memory, for instance. So we just follow the process that Prabhupada gave us is the process of getting mercy. The sadhana is a process of sadhya, of getting the mercy of bhava. If we follow it seriously, focus our minds and give our loves to the process, to Krishna, then the mercy will be bestowed upon us. Yes, Madhuri.
You had said we must help the innocent to learn to love Krishna. Who are the innocent?
Most of us, to begin with. And then the innocent is most of the people in this world. They don't even know that they're not their body. They think they're, as Prabhupada once said in an election for one of the presidents of the United States, they think their solution to their problems is to elect a Republican rather than a Democrat. He said, but that's been going on for hundreds of years. They've been simply changing from one cheater to the next with no solution. Resolution, revolution, revolution, dissolution, no solution. All right. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Bhagavad-Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.